Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment course from New Earth One Network. This is designed exclusively for your higher self connection and embodiment. Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment course. We are truly here talking about New Earth creations. This is how we build New Earth, how we anchor in ideas from our higher self to truly make a difference. Yet, so many of us feel the call of this heart, but we are hesitant to take action. So this is a practical course on real steps that we can take. And my guest today is Helen Claire Harmon, who is on a New Earth mission. Hello, Helen. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Lauren. I'm so happy to be here. And the intro that you just gave to this series is such a perfect fit with what I'm bringing forward. So thank you for those words, because they are exactly the kind of vibrational endeavor that I'm working with.
Wow. Well, it's beautiful. We're going to learn how we can truly step into the reason why we incarnated here on this planet. Before we even came into physical bodies, we raised our hand, each of us watching and listening. Every person on this planet said we could do it. So it's a tall order, but this is where one foot in front of the other comes into play, listening to the heart and taking action and watching magic happen. We're going to talk really about what is the magic ingredients in all of this. So before we get there, you are here for the School for Humans and Earth, and this is ways that we can live together. How did you come into this awareness of your role for New Earth?
Yes, it's a good question. Well, I grew up with parents who were attuned to the natural world, and I spent time hiking and gardening and, learning about nature spirits and things like that. But I got onto a very different, less earth-oriented path. I spent a couple of decades training and working in history, primarily history of religion and culture. And that work was very important to me, and it still is. But when I was raising small children in the Philadelphia suburbs, I came into an all new awareness of what was going on with the planet. I was certainly aware of environmental issues and I cared about them, but hearing that there were air quality alert days when small children were not supposed to play outside really rocked my world, because I chose to be a stay-at-home mom so that my children could play outside. And so that was the beginning for me of a really serious inquiry into what was happening and why, and particularly what we can do about it. So I went through a brief phase that was very focused on activism, and I recognized pretty quickly how easy it is to burn out in that, what I call the 20th century activist model, because it doesn't really include earth connection or spiritual connection or the deep regeneration of the self. Also, unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, it was a step, but our 20th century environmental movement focused on problems and scary information and this kind of non alluring standard of sustainability. So, what I have come to realize and build over the last several years of pretty intense personal development, because like many of us, I'm uh, well, I'm sure my soul chose it, but definitely on the mastery path of challenges and up leveling. But what I've come to realize is that it's the regenerative standard that is truly inspiring. And we can't just talk about trying to regenerate the planet, because we and Earth are life partners. We are in this together. We are meant to be in this together. And of course, one of the most vital things we need to do is not only restore our planet, but our own bodies and health, spiritual, mental, physical. So I've come to be really passionate about transforming vision into action and calling into contribution. As I said, I loved the intro that you gave, because I've come to realize over, years of exploration and observation and connecting to nature and my own soul, we are meant to be here as the beings who connect the heavens and earth. We have this amazing vocation as humans to be bringing in the celestial soul, higher self guidance, and be very physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually connected to the planet, and be weaving those two realms together. So, what I'm encouraging people to be immersed in is all about interweaving the spirituality, the personal flourishing and personal development, the earth connection, and regenerating our planet for all the beings who are here.
Hallelujah. I know everyone is clapping loudly for you on that and saying, yes, this is why we're here. All right. We're going to have you share some ways that we can really do this. But I wanted to say, looking at the big scope of the big picture that presents itself to us, we've got many things to focus on. And on one hand, we can see that in this past year of this great shift that's going on, that there's a love for nature even more. In where I am, 75% of the state believes that we should have more open space, trails, parks, watering areas, water holes, all of it. That's beautiful. And yet we have corporations. There needs to be conscious economics or conscious production, conscious business, so that if you're a company putting out lots of items that are packaged, is there a responsibility to bring back that packaging? So that's an example of what we're talking about here, because there's so many things that strike us as common sense. And that's one of the things to pay attention to. It comes like as an idea that pops up, right? Where we're like, hey, that's a really good idea. And then it's like the ego mind can come in and say, but somebody's already doing that. You've got, we call it the yeah buts, where it's like the ego comes in and says, yeah, but let's get real. Who are you? You don't have the skills, the know how. Actually, you're here to beg to differ.
Yes, it's a really good question. And the course that I'm bringing forward is going to lead people through very kind of spiritual and intuitive steps of connection to their own vision and sense of mission, very thoughtful connection with the natural world, plants, animals, nature beings, and collaboration with others. Because, as you just mentioned, this can all feel very overwhelming. I talk to people all the time who are completely overwhelmed and discouraged. And so there are all kinds of ways that I like to help with that. One is I really encourage people to practice wise focus. And in brief, for right now, we can talk more about it if you want to, and it's an aspect of the course. But in brief, wise focus is keeping your attention on the solutions, not on the problems. So that, I think, is very, very important. You can go from demoralized and terrified to rather optimistic and hopeful when you are in tune with the amazing regenerative solutions that already are in place. So many people don't realize that regenerative agriculture already has the potential to solve climate change. We simply need to scale it up. And as we do so, we feed ourselves, we nourish the soil, we improve ecosystems. Regenerative agriculture is win, 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 win. Similarly, we are learning to do things like make packaging. You mentioned packaging out of mycelium, out of mushrooms, right? So we're getting closer to that time where you might buy something and then put all the packaging in your compost pile or your compost bin. But you need to be practicing wise focus in order to be aware of these things. I think also people need to learn or relearn to practice reverent relationship to your own sacred self and to every other being. Because as Indigenous people have always known, and I like to remind people, we all have Indigenous roots. Literally, no matter what color, race, or ethnicity you are, you have Indigenous roots. Indigenous people have always known, and we can all relearn or remember reverent relationship, knowing that every being is sacred, every relationship is sacred. When you get into that space, you just don't feel good buying a lot of plastic items with a lot of plastic packaging. Similarly, I think when people define their own regenerative vision, which might be on any scale, and I really want to speak to that, because if you are someone who has a planetary mission, that is fantastic. And I am delighted to be in conversation with you or support you. If you have a mission that applies to your city or region, wonderful. But it is just as valid to be focusing on a contribution in your neighborhood or even just in your household. So if that's your focus, if that's where you feel called to do something regenerative in your backyard or to teach the children in your family some loving regenerative skills that benefit people and planet, it's enough to do that. But you just need to have that regenerative vision for yourself and know that whatever scale your heart is telling you to contribute at, then that's your appropriate scale. And you can really kind of dig in there and feel wonderful about it and not feel compelled or obligated to solve the whole big picture. Then coming back to wise focus, if you're practicing wise focus and you are staying in touch with the extraordinarily regenerative and healing things that are happening all over the planet, I think your sense of fear and panic and overwhelm and responsibility goes way down, because you realize, oh, people are doing things to conserve the mangrove forests, and the lady lioness conservation guardians in the Masai Mara in Kenya are bringing feminine wisdom and gender equity to conservation work in the Masai Mara. So, I'm not responsible for the lions in Kenya because the lady lioness guardians are doing that. And similarly, we could talk for days about the regenerative developments around the world. As you track them with wise focus, then you realize more and more, okay, I can focus on my piece. I can contribute where I feel called. Other people are making other contributions.
Yes, that is beautiful. So, for those who may not be so familiar with regenerative developments around the world and regenerative skills, can you share with us some examples of what this is? You mentioned agriculture, and the good news is we're seeing that pop up even in local communities. It's beautiful.
Yes. So a lot of people are familiar with the sustainability standard, which, had really good intentions, but it's not very beautiful or inspiring. The sustainability standard says, um, let's try to use enough resources and do just the right amount of damage that we can keep going for a good while. The regenerative standard brings in lusciousness and beauty and a much greater level of durability, and says that the way that humans live on the planet needs to become the way every other being lives on the planet, which is regenerative. That as you use resources, you contribute back to those resources, and you're continually doing things that are not just sustaining an ecosystem, soil, a water system, the air, our supply of minerals, but you're actually doing things that renew, regenerate, rebuild all the beautiful resources and beings here on the planet. So regenerative agriculture, as you mentioned, as I mentioned, it's easy to understand because through regenerative agriculture, we're taking organic approaches, but we're rebuilding soil as we grow crops. And we're leaving room for pollinators, for beneficial insects, and for birds. We're leaving room for native plants. We're actually, through regenerative agriculture, leaving the soil better than before we started growing certain crops. So I think that helps people to understand this is going quite far beyond sustainability in a way that is truly inspiring and gorgeous and enticing, and I think very inviting.
Mhm. Yes, all right. Just on a personal note, you've confirmed an idea that I've had myself. We're already starting to see it. Reusable to go items, to go containers. We've
Yes.
seen it. And so just, yeah, you've actually inspired me anew to just get out there and begin. So
Yeah.
that's very interesting. Let's talk a little bit about ways that people can tap into their ideas, more of this wise focus, and then use that to really create something that is maybe even bigger than we've imagined, but part of our soul mission.
Yes. So wise focus, I think, is a place to begin, and it's actually what we'll do in the first week of the course is really talk about how to practice wise focus, because it brings you into that higher vibrational solutions place rather than the problem focus. I talk to people all the time who are really demoralized and depressed and pessimistic about life on planet Earth. Well, that's the problem focus. And what I tend to notice is those people are not making a healing contribution because they're in the problem and discouragement and despair energy. So with wise focus, you choose to be in the solutions energy, the healing and the regenerative energy. Then I think you're able to really tune into your own heart and soul and get a sense of what lights you up. If it is educating children in nature, then do that. If it is urban agriculture that is feeding a local community and restoring soil and helping birds and pollinators, then that is a wonderful mission. If it is developing new products, like you just mentioned, to-go containers, and I just saw there's yet another to-go container that's made out of wheat gluten. I happen to be gluten-free for genetic reasons, so that wouldn't be my container. But it's very easily compostable. So you could go get your takeout food and actually you can eat that container or you can throw it into your compost bin. So some people are called to develop these new products, these new ways. Other people are called to just be doing something in kind of their own homestead, maybe growing a beautiful garden, making that space for birds, for pollinators, providing food for their household and maybe some neighbors. But as you're practicing the wise focus and keeping yourself in the higher vibration, then I think you can hear what lights me up. What piece of this regenerative revolution do I want to be contributing to? And then the next thing is to look for collaborators. And we're accustomed to thinking of collaboration with other people, but I'm really encouraging people to recognize that first we collaborate with our higher selves and souls, and then we need to be collaborating with the planet and with plants and animals and microbes and the elements and ecosystems. And that involves a kind of very deep and reverent listening. And it involves giving ourselves the space to start transitioning out of domination and hierarchy and parasitism and into a true regenerative collaboration between people and the planet. And so that's where we bring in things like learning how to communicate with plants, or if you already know how to do that, making sure that as you're visioning your regenerative contribution, you're asking the plants what their view is or what their need is. You're communicating with animals, with Earth herself, maybe with microbes, maybe with an ecosystem or a place where you want to enact something. I want to pause and clarify too that I really welcome into this work people who are not directly focused on the natural world, but maybe focused more on helping people and want those efforts that they're making to be very earth aware. So, you might have a calling to support plants or animals or a particular ecosystem or an element like air or water. Or you may have a calling that is primarily focused on human needs. And that is, of course, very valid and needed. But you still can bring into that work a connection to Earth, gaining support and wisdom from Earth, gaining support and wisdom from plants or animals. Maybe taking the people you are serving into nature connection for their own recovery. So I really like to clarify that although my own focus is very much on the human-earth relationship, I think this work is also really relevant and welcoming to people who are more focused on assisting people.
I love the fact that this is a collaboration with Earth and learning how to communicate with Earth, communicating with the plants, and all of this. Do you want to share a little bit more on how we develop these communication skills?
Yes, I think one thing that's interesting is it can be easy. I truly believe that we all naturally have the clair skills, whether it's clairaudience hearing or clairvoyance or clairsentience. And so it may take someone some time and patience to bring those online. You may have to do some self-development and self-nurturing. Maybe your diet needs some adjustment, or you need to meditate to get more into spiritual alignment. But anybody can sit down with a plant or an animal, a home companion animal, or you can sit outdoors and be present to the squirrels or the birds. Anybody can do that and just listen and find out what you sense, what you hear. Particularly, of course, you want to make sure to be listening with your heart and not only with kind of the critical judging mind. But I really encourage people to just make some time and space for this. You can, of course, take courses. You can study with people if you want support. You can get books for some encouragement. But I've taken some of those courses and read some of those books, and they're wonderful. And primarily what they encourage is make the time to listen and connect. Just practice that, and you probably will find yourself developing a connection, hearing or feeling something. And that is a whole new level of being human on planet Earth. It can really assuage the loneliness that a lot of us feel, the way that we can so easily feel out of place and not sure who we are or why we're here. As you start communicating with the beings of the natural world, all of that becomes easier. And so giving yourself the time and space for that listening, whether it's to a lake or a plant or an animal, is a really wonderful practice.
Again, I just love it. I love this. And it is New Earth to a T. It's really the way forward in connection with the higher self. Yes. As we learn to communicate with the plants, for example, how would we collaborate with the plants? It's all the extra ways to bring the plants into our life, whether it's through aromatherapy or even plant music or all of this.
The things that you mentioned, I think, are wonderful. We can use essential oils, we can use flower essences. I'm a flower essence practitioner. Of course, we are, hopefully, we're collaborating with plants anytime we grow them. We are deeply benefiting from them literally every single second of our existence because of the oxygen that they produce and the food they produce for us. But when I'm thinking about collaboration with plants, I'm also thinking about actually listening to their needs and insight when you bring forward your collaboration with the planet and your contribution to regeneration. So a lot of people are gardeners. That's a very easy place to begin. Start exploring as you have a plan for something you want to do with your plants. Is that what your plants want to do? And can you pause and listen and find out whether what you have in mind is appropriate for them or welcoming to them? On a bigger scale, because we have done so much damage to the planet, I think it's really important as we start creating our next level regenerative contributions. This cannot just be humans acting on the natural world. This needs to be humans saying, okay, what we think needs to happen in this particular location or ecosystem is this. But what do the local plants and animals say? Is this feasible for them? Does this include them? To come back to the example, you mentioned the regenerative or compostable packaging, and I gave the example of the new product made from wheat gluten. I think that sounds like an excellent product, but it raises the question for me, humans really use the wheat plant a lot. And from a health perspective, this is another topic we probably don't have time for, but from a health perspective, it's questionable how much we use the wheat plant. But maybe for the wheat plant, it's questionable how much we use the wheat plant. And so, and also perhaps it is fine for the plant because plants very often are very happy to be in service to us. But what I'm talking about is as we craft our regenerative contributions, actually bringing in the voices of other beings, plants, animals, minerals, nature spirits, the elements, and asking them, is the plan that the humans are coming up with a good one? How could it be better? How could it be more nourishing? How could it be more regenerative for all of the beings who are involved?
That is a really, really good point, and I love that. That is true collaboration when we ask, and it's a partnership. I absolutely love it. And I know all who are watching and listening love it as well. I want to share an example that confirms exactly what you said. And it really is listening to the plants. I've been recording plant music for about a decade, and I've learned so much about the plants and the consciousness of the plants. You're correct, they truly give us so much. And the music that we can hear from the energy when we connect or we ask them or we unload this and say, I'm having an issue with this, it's so beautiful. The music that is given to us, that it dredges out those deeper negative emotions and it lifts us up in vibration. And I want to share just a quick anecdote. I had set out a couple of my plants, orchids, and with the intention of using the tracks, several plants, and mixing all of those tracks in a symphony. I recorded them one track at a time, one in a session. My ego mind came in the editing aspect, and I took out the blank part before they would begin to sing. Like if there was silence in the beginning, I would take that out. So the music began all at the same time and it sounded terrible. And I looked at the plants and I heard very clearly, we gave you the exact files for your tracks. Start there with the original unedited versions. And when I mixed them together, it was so beautiful.
That is a really wonderful story, Lauren. And I think it reminds us that this world we live in is full of wisdom. We've made the mistake in the last few centuries of thinking we're the only ones with the wisdom and the knowledge, but that is not so. I'm reminded too, when you mentioned plant music, that there is a role for all of this for science, of course. So, you record your plant music using some technology. And although I'm very much advocating for people to learn to listen to the natural world through their hearts and their intuitive capacities, scientific measurements are a way of listening also. And I want to acknowledge the space for that too.
Yes, it's interesting because the science is just quantum physics. It's just barely beginning to prove what the great sages have always spoke about, and the yogis who travel off planet and all of this. So that is beautiful. And for those who need that confirmation, then that'll bring them further into that collaboration with the plants and the minerals and the animals.
Yes, and I'd like to bring forth that one other step that is really relevant here is what I call soulful sovereignty and support. And this involves recognizing the sovereignty of every being's right to flourishing, to having its needs met, to being listened to and honored. That, of course, includes every human self. And this aspect is really important, not only because we can turn things around on this planet as we come to recognize the sovereignty of every being, but also because, referring back to what we talked about earlier, the 20th century activist model can be very depleting, very draining, very depressing. I was just yesterday talking to someone who said she has worked in the environmental field and was completely drained and depleted. So soulful sovereignty and support includes every being, and that includes you, the person making the contribution. So your contribution should acknowledge, if you're working with other people or plants or animals or a body of water, their sovereignty, but also your own. Nobody should be being parasitized. We are, excuse me, just as we are outgrowing codependence among human people, I think we are also beginning to recognize that we need to outgrow codependence and parasitism between humans and the planet. And again, every being needs to be nurtured and nourished. And so that means for you, making whatever kind of contribution you're making in the world, you care for yourself, you sustain yourself. ideally you want to be more than sustainable. You want to be regenerative and flourishing and thriving. So this is a really sacred space for every self, every being to be included in the thriving and the flourishing that we're trying to create on the whole planet, and that I think each of us can be co-creating on whatever scale we're called to.
Yes, and don't be afraid if you get a really grandiose idea or inspiration. Yes.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's really wise, Loren. And I've been in conversation lately with, some of my own teachers who are reminding us, if you feel that you have a large calling, then you probably do. And I think so many of us are still playing small, afraid that this calling we sense is egotistical. Well, it's not. I mean, if you're looking to just enrich yourself or be on the cover of the pop magazine, I mean, that might be egotistical. But if you have a sense of a big mission or calling, please listen, everyone. Please find the tools you need to believe in it and to nurture yourself and to bring it forward, because that's really the time we're in on the planet right now.
And it very simply does come down to the ego mind coming in, stomping its muddy boots all over our dreams. So, is there a way that you work with your clients to take action steps? Like if someone is finding a big inspiration, a big grandiose plan, but yet, there's big things that can get in the way. What steps can you offer your clients in that one foot in front of the other way?
Yeah. Well, I'm taking people through these 7 steps of collaboration with Earth because they really meet you wherever you are. So, someone may already be practicing wise focus, but unless you're a true spiritual sage, you can practice wise focus at a higher level. Someone may be practicing reverent relationship and finding that that is sustaining or nurturing. We can either learn new skills there or practice it more deeply. Similarly, I think a lot of us have been taught to come up with a vision or a plan, but is it regenerative for all involved? Does it respect the soulful sovereignty of everyone? Does it support you as the contributor? So I'm finding that whatever stage people are at, whether it's the dreaming and the visioning, or they're deep into implementation, but they want their implementation to be more nurturing for themselves or others or more earth connected, these 7 steps of collaboration with Earth meet you where you are and help you to deepen what you're doing and make it more regenerative for you and for anybody who's involved.
So, again, this shift of the focus to those practices and away from the problems. So, I'm going to go out on a limb here for an example, because I know many are, say fracking, for example. That doesn't feel right to so many, not at all. And even in my state, it's really depressing. You're right. We can really get depressed. What would be the best actions to take on that?
That's a really good question. And I agree. It is a tough and a distressing problem. I'm from Colorado and I live in Pennsylvania now. Both of these states have been very affected by fracking. So, if you are someone who wants to do something about fracking, let's say maybe at a community scale, so maybe in your town or county, and then you might have some level of contribution at the state level, for example. These 7 steps of collaboration with Earth could help you because you would be in an activist role that is arising because of a problem. But with wise focus, you would help yourself and everyone you come into contact with recognize the wise vision of what the alternative is. So you would be remembering to inspire people. Here's a set of really discouraging problems related to fracking. What we could have is clean air, clean water, safe schools and neighborhoods, because we've chosen a different alternative. And of course, you bring in the economic piece and show people that, contrary to some of the very bad marketing that is out there, renewable energy jobs are many in number and safe and healthy and keep jobs in our own country rather than outsourcing them. So you would be building for people in your neighborhood or your town council, your state legislature, this vision of the better alternative. You would be nurturing yourself and making sure that the way that you're participating is not burning you out, because then you can't keep contributing. So part of that would be the earth connection, asking the plants and the mineral kingdom for sustenance and wisdom and guidance, calling in your spiritual guidance, and definitely looking for ways that your endeavors can be sacred collaborations. So how can you collaborate with elected officials and bring a very sacred high vibrational energy to that? Can you collaborate with for-profit organizations that might be persuaded to join your view that fracking is really damaging to the earth and to human health, and we have better alternatives? So that is a really good example, Loren, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it's an example of when this work is not all joy and rainbows and butterflies, but when it is dealing with something that is gritty and dangerous, and how you can engage in a practical way, yet stay attuned to your spiritual guidance, to the support of the natural world, to every being's sovereignty, and to the aim for the collaborations to be sacred, so that the outcome is regenerative. And I think with something like fracking, that, many of us wish we could eliminate that overnight. And maybe we should do one of the intention experiments and do a mass meditation and see if we can end fracking. But in case that approach doesn't work, I think we need to kind of see the big picture and recognize that we would love to end fracking today, but in case we're not able to make that happen, what are steps that are going in that direction? From another angle, somebody might decide, I can't even interact with that fracking issue. It is way too painful for me. So what I am going to do, what I feel able to do and inspired to do, is go contribute to the renewable energy revolution. So I love that you brought up this fracking example, because I think we can learn how to be activists with the painful issues using this model that I'm offering of the 7 steps of collaboration with Earth, or we can choose to build the alternative solution. And that is really a matter of personal discernment. That is where people need to tune into their hearts and check their own level of health and resilience and say, do I have it in me to go be in dialogue with the fracking companies and the elected officials who support them? Well, if you do, then more power to you. And I would certainly love to support you. But if that's draining, then build the alternative solution instead. And both are really honorable, sacred paths.
Absolutely. I love that. So thank you for talking about that, because again, the focus is on the inspiration, not focusing on the problem and the sadness or, oh, it's overtaken, but the inspiration. And
the economic piece fits in here too, if I can just add that. You mentioned earlier the need for ecological economics, and that is developing. I want people to know it's a wonderful field. In fact, the free ebook that you get mentions in one of the sections some of the current resources in ecological economics. It's a very, very important area. And that's one of the areas where those of us who feel called need to become just informed enough that we can help people see that the arguments that are made about the economy has to be this way. Not so. The economy is our creation. We are in charge of it. And if we want to create an ecological economy that is regenerative, that's totally within our power. So I very much encourage people to get a little bit or moderately or very informed about ecological economics, and then talk it up so that others realize the current economic discourse is not the only discourse.
Hallelujah. Beautiful. And so we've said, we the people are the economy. We the people are the economy. And we can create the demand for tools that help the earth. For example, we can create the demand for solar panels on roofs. What I start to see, I'm in Colorado, what I'm starting to see is a trend of taking open, vacant land and creating solar panel fields. And is that the right solution? Why are these not on roofs? Every new house build should have this roof. So there's things that we can take, and this is these small action steps. Again, it's the inspiration that comes from being out in nature and these ideas that come in. We can write letters to the editor. So we can write letters to the editor of our local newspaper that creates the demand, and it actually seeds the consciousness of those reading. And they're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that we can do with the fracking, how about if you seed an idea through your local letters to the editor or even letters to your elected officials that say free education to all the workers of the fracking fields for them to go into industries of their choice. These
Yes.
are simple ideas.
Yes.
Or when we're looking at the homelessness issues, look at how many buildings are sitting vacant. And even before the pandemic, we started to notice there's basements in tall high-rise buildings. So these are issues that maybe not everyone agrees about, but it helps to begin the conversation and stimulate those ideas.
Yes. And I think something that we can all step into more, this is kind of a simple way of talking about the regenerative path, is to look for the win-win-win. We're accustomed to solving one problem and making sure it works for one group of people. But when I think of your example of seeing solar panels placed on open land, I think, in some settings that can be very appropriate, but we're also learning we can mix solar panels with agriculture and with animals such as sheep. So that is more like a triple win if you're using land for solar panels and for a crop. And apparently sheep love to stand under the shade that solar panels provide, which I think is really charming. So, I think that's where we're headed now, is we're looking for solutions that work for multiple constituencies, people and plants, people and animals, people and the water system, maybe the homeless people and the owners of the high-rise building and the local municipality that can be served by a population of people who are living in the inner city. So I encourage people to look for the multiple win solution.
Beautiful. And so it's heart-based and it is solution oriented. And again, it's our connection with our higher self that brings this through, and also the collaboration with Earth. And so you've got a course, a beautiful course that goes over all of the 7 steps of collaboration with Earth, and you go deeply into this.
So the course is welcoming anyone who has any scale of contribution in mind, whether from your household to the planet or beyond, and anyone who is focusing on the human earth relationship or regeneration and support for plants and animals, but also, as I said earlier, people who might be focusing primarily on meeting human needs, but they want to do so in a very earth aware, nature aware way. So, as you said, in the 7 weeks of the live course, we will go through these 7 steps of collaboration with Earth. There is a weekly live course meeting with a replay for people who can't attend live. There's a guidebook that comes along with the course. And we'll begin with Wise Focus because I have come to realize over many years of study, it's really foundational. You and I know, and I'm sure your listeners know, Lauren, Wise Focus is really about vibrational attunement and where you're placing your thought energy. Then we will explore Reverent Relationship, including Reverent Relationship with yourself as a starting point, with yourself as sacred, Reverent Relationship to your higher self and your soul mission, and then asking, once I'm in tune with myself as a sacred being, with what other sacred beings do I feel called to experience Reverent Relationship, either as my service and contribution or for support and insight. Then we will work on crafting your regenerative vision, again, at any scale, whether it's primarily focused on your home scale or a bigger scale. What makes the vision regenerative is something we'll talk about. What makes it regenerative for all the beings that it impacts and for you as the visionary and the creator. Then soulful sovereignty and support, as I mentioned earlier, your own sovereignty and support being very, very important so that together we outgrow this model of the depleted, impoverished, burned out activist or, servant to others. And we start creating the energies and the solutions where everyone is supported, everyone is nourished and flourishing. Then, of course, sacred collaboration, as I talked about a little bit already. And that includes collaboration with guidance and spirit beings, with plants, with animals, with people. And this allows us to kind of step out of that martyr or savior role or the hierarchical system where you're acting on someone else, but instead we start co-creating this collaborative approach. Regenerative outcomes will be the focus of week 6 of the course. How do we plan for an outcome that is regenerative? What does that mean? What will it look like? How will I know? And in the 7th week, we'll talk about assessment and celebration. I'm thinking of your fracking example when I think about assessment, because fracking is exemplary of so many of the things we've done on the planet in the last 200 years, where we take action and we think there's a benefit, but we don't do an honest assessment of how much damage we're causing, or is in fact there a benefit. Similarly, a lot of people who've gotten really burned out and exhausted haven't assessed, is this working for me? Am I sustaining and regenerating myself? So we'll talk about the role of wise assessment and also the role of celebration. So to come back again to your very good fracking example, fracking is truly distressing and damaging, but we could celebrate that there's growing awareness of that. We could celebrate that there is a lot of activism. We could celebrate the rather significant and fast progress in renewable energy right now. And we'd be celebrating whatever your own endeavor is, so that we're kind of maintaining that regenerative energy rather than I have this goal and I'm going to become exhausted while I achieve it. Or when I get there, I'm not going to be delighted that I achieved it. I'm just going to, skip the delight and celebration and pick the next goal. So those are the focuses of the 7 weeks of the course. And I'm really excited to be offering it.
So beautiful to have you focusing on really helping the new Earth leaders step into their mastery, their mission, their power, and this beautiful collaboration with Earth. I also want to mention that this beautiful package includes time with you. And it's not just the 7 weeks on the Zoom course with the PDF book, but it is time with you in a personal session.
Yes, I really love to work with people one on one and help them to discern where they are in their personal process. Are they, deeply engaging in implementation, or are they at the visioning stage, or are they at the stage of practicing connections to plants and animals or their own inner insight? So in those one-on-one sessions, we'll just work on whatever is most appropriate for whomever I'm meeting with at that time, wherever they are in their process and their development. And I love that you use the words mastery and service and new earth, because I am here to support anybody who either believes that we can create this amazing new earth of flourishing for all beings, or wants to believe that.
We are here to bring forward new earth, and you're a beautiful guide for those who wish to do that. You've helped people take action steps and move forward in their life. And it's really wonderful to have that support. And I love it. There's also a couple of PDF books that you're including. One is Guidance for the New Earth Co-Creator, and the other is a guide to informed optimism. Things to know and explore to feel hopeful about the human future with Earth. Talk a little bit about those two books.
Yes. So the Guide to Informed Optimism takes people through some things they can become aware of and some steps that they can take to practice wise focus, to be aware and informed about the state of things on our planet, but turn that into an optimism, because you're also aware that not only are we in a time of destruction and damage, but we also are in a time of increasing regenerative solutions. The Guidance for the New Earth Co-Creator, that is the ebook I was referencing earlier that gives some insights on how to learn about ecological economics. It takes people through, I think it's 7 areas that you can be aware of if you're wanting to get a sense of the regenerative picture, and skills that you can develop yourself, like listening to the natural world, listening to your own inner guidance.
Well, thank you so much for this course that is available. It'll be recorded for those who cannot join live. And it really is here to support your efforts. And so all of this for this beautiful price, it's available right here on this webpage. That is a lot of value, incredible support with Helen, and action for your role, for your own mission for New Earth. It is so beautiful to be able to create New Earth with this vision, with this wise focus, with this optimism that we are actually doing it. There are beautiful things happening when we choose to, I like to call it reading between the lines out in the collective. And there are some good things happening. It is a great opportunity. Like you said, Helen, the old is collapsing, and it's, instead of watching how it's collapsing or who done it, we can instead focus on the incredible opportunity and the openness now of hearts to receive it in new ways that they weren't ready for in the past. Isn't that beautiful?
Yes, I love the way that you said that, Lauren. That is exactly how I see it. Those of us who are aware or are feeling this inner calling, we need to step forward and be ready now to build the new ways of being on this planet. There are plenty of us now. We have all the resources and information that we need, and we just need to step forward and encourage one another. And I feel so privileged to be doing that. And I really thank you for your work, which has been a beautiful platform for so many people who are talking about this New Earth mission. And I know for me, in following your work and your guests over more years than I can count, I have really gained a lot of inspiration and learning from what you're bringing to the world.
Oh, well, beautiful. Helen Claire Harmon, thank you so much for the beautiful time today, the beautiful inspiration, the optimism for New Earth. We are getting there and we feel empowered. You're helping others feel and get that way as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.